This woman's life took a surprising and unwanted turn when she discovered her fiance was cheating. She wanted nothing to do with him anymore and decided to sell her engagement ring, but when the expert saw it, he said, "This can't be true." And the woman would soon regret trying to sell the ring. Woman tries to sell ring gifted by ex. When expert sees it, he says this can't be true. Jenny's life was everything she ever dreamed of. She was able to go to college and get an excellent job due to her career. She was able to buy a lovely little house, and during her studies, she met a fantastic guy who got her a nice ring for their upcoming marriage. They had been together for about 6 years, and he moved in with her quickly. They shared a lot of friends, and their families were great. A recipe for a great marriage. But right before the wedding was going to happen, Jenny found out that Malcolm wasn't the future husband she thought he was. Because Jenny and Malcolm shared the same friend group and she was close with his family, she eventually discovered that what he told her didn't align with what friends and family told her. After paying close attention, she found he lied about activities with friends and family so he could meet with another woman. Jenny was devastated and furious at the same time. She wanted nothing to do with Malcolm anymore and threw all his belongings and things out of her house. Malcolm tried to reason with her, only making her more angry. Did he think she could forgive him? But then he asked something unexpected. "Can I at least have the ring back?" he pleaded to her. Jenny stared at him as her fingers rubbed the diamond ring. No, she snapped at him. She initially planned on returning it, but now she kept it purely because he wanted it back, hoping it would frustrate him. And it certainly looked like it frustrated him because after Jenny's refusal, he desperately tried to convince her to change her mind. But Jenny's mind was made up and she didn't waver. Eventually, Malcolm gave up and left, looking anxious. She closed the door and let out a sigh. Why did he behave so oddly? Now that Malcolm was gone and she had gotten rid of all his things, she felt much relieved, but her mind kept returning to his behavior. She looked at the ring. It was the only thing left inside the house that reminded her of him. Why did he want it back so badly? Jenny shrugged as she looked at it. It seemed very expensive, so that was probably why. But whatever Malcolm's reason for wanting it was, it didn't matter to her. She already made up her mind to sell it so she could buy something nice for herself, unaware she would soon regret that decision. She grabbed her phone and looked up nearby jewelry stores. She didn't want to go to a pawn shop as the ring looked very expensive, and she wanted a real expert to look at it. A smile appeared on her face as she found a nearby jeweler who accepted jewelry for cash. "Perfect," she exclaimed. Jenny got in the car and started the journey. During the drive, she fantasized about the ring's worth and thought about what she would be able to buy. She hoped that treating herself would be the first step in recovering from the sudden breakup, but things would turn out differently than expected. The bell rang as Jenny entered the jewelry, signaling to the employees someone entered the store. Jenny looked around the empty jewelry and saw a man coming out of a back room. She approached the man who stood behind a counter and took out the ring. "Could you tell me about this, please?" she asked. The expert smiled, nodded, and gestured for Jenny to put the ring on the counter. He put on some gloves and picked up the ring. The moment he took a closer look, Jenny saw his eyes widen. "This is a very nice ring," the man said as he examined it carefully. The expert looked at the ring from every angle and muttered something. Then he grabbed a loop from under the counter and examined the ring closer, and then his behavior seemed to change. He tensed up momentarily and quickly glanced at Jenny before focusing on the ring again. Did he notice something wrong? What happened? But before Jenny could ask the man what was going on, he sighed deeply. After which he mumbled, "This can't be true. What can't be true?" "What's the matter?" Jenny asked, but the expert ignored her questions and grabbed an even more magnifying loupe while turning the ring in his hand. It seemed like the expert was in his own world and had forgotten about Jenny. She scraped her throat to try and get his attention, but the man was startled by the sudden noise and clumsily dropped the ring. I'm sorry," the expert stammered as he bent down to grab it. Jenny thought it took him to look and tried to peek over the counter, but the man returned upright right at that moment. "Nothing to worry about. It's still in pristine condition," he said, showing her the ring. Jenny noticed the man's hands were trembling, and he seemed nervous. What was going on? "Come with me," the expert suddenly said as he walked toward the door he had come through earlier. Jenny was hesitant as she didn't know what was going on and didn't immediately follow the man. "What for?" she asked suspiciously. The man smiled at her and gave her an explanation. "This is a very exceptional ring. I would like to compare it with my private collection to offer you the right price," the expert said. Jenny's eyes lit up as she thought the ring must be worth a fortune to make an expert nervous, and she followed him, unaware this decision would seal her fate. Jenny looked around the room. It was a small office with a desk and a vault. Beside the door was a window with blinds so the man could watch the store from his office. The man gestured for Jenny to sit down and said he had forgotten something. Jenny wanted to respond, but then Before she could say anything, the man quickly left the room and slammed the door behind him. Jenny got up and she heard the lock click as she approached the door. Her hand shook as she tried to move the door handle, but it wouldn't give. The man had locked her inside. With her hand still gripped around the door handle, Jenny tried to process what had just happened. She shook her head, moved away from the door, and opened the blinds to look into the store. Her breathing quickened and her heart pounded. "What are you doing?" "Let me out," she screamed. The expert looked at her from the other side of the window and a smirk appeared on his face. "I know what you did. I pressed the silent alarm a while ago so the police would be here any minute," he said satisfactorily. The words echoed through Jenny's mind. Silent alarm, police. Nothing made sense. The expert's weird behavior and the confusing comments made Jenny furious. "What do you mean? What's going on? Let me out of here," she exclaimed, banging on the window. But the man was not impressed and turned around. Jenny realized he wouldn't let her go, so she had to think of something else. She rattled the door handle and threw her whole body into the door, but everything she did was futile. Jenny sat down and tried to calm herself down to think logically. And then something struck her. She couldn't think of anything she had done wrong, so she could just tell the police she was innocent. When the police finally arrived and Jenny heard what the expert told the police, she got her hopes up. "I got the culprit for the stolen jewelry locked up in my office," he said. Jenny couldn't help but smile. Stolen jewelry? All she had was the ring. And she got that from Malcolm. But then, she tried to sell me this ring, which is part of the stolen collection, the expert continued as he showed the officers her engagement ring. All of Jenny's hope vaporized as the words got through to her. Was the ring stolen? Her mind was spinning when the police entered the office. Jenny frantically looked up at the officers, her heart was pounding and tears formed in her eyes. Her mind was working overtime, trying to think of what to say and do. The officers asked her questions about the situation in the ring, but all she could think of was, "I'm innocent." Realizing her behavior wasn't helping her case, Jenny tried to calm herself down. She took a few deep breaths and wiped away her tears. Once more confident, she explained to the officers that she got the ring from her ex and wanted to sell it. But the officers didn't look satisfied with her story. So Jenny decided to go into detail, not caring how painful the memories were. She explained that she recently discovered that her soon-to-be husband was a cheating bastard and that she broke up with him. She wanted to get rid of everything of him, even the ring. And as she explained, something crossed her mind. "He did act very strange when I refused to give the ring back to him," Jenny exclaimed, hopeful this would help her prove that she was innocent. And her newfound hope had some ground because the police officers suddenly seemed very interested in her ex. They asked her to elaborate on his strange behavior. Jenny explained that after she refused to return the ring, he tried to convince her to change her mind. And when he eventually left, he seemed very nervous and anxious, she said. Jenny never thought he would be able to steal something, but she didn't think he would cheat either. The officers seemed satisfied with Jenny's story this time, but she remained a suspect in the case and was taken to the station. Once there, the officers asked where they could get Malcolm and instructed her to wait. Jenny made herself comfortable, confident she would be released soon, but the situation was far from over. They didn't put her in a holding cell, but there was an officer who kept an eye on her. The wait seemed to take forever as nothing happened at the police station until an unknown woman entered the building. The good-looking and seemingly successful woman looked around and approached Jenny after spotting her. Jenny stared at the woman as she directly walked toward her. The women shook hands and Jenny was surprised when the woman called her by her name. Who was this mysterious woman? How did she know her name? Was she a lawyer? Did she need one? Jenny thought worriedly, but before she could ask, suddenly a police officer appeared beside them and instructed them to follow him. Jenny's mind was racing as she followed the officer. The appearance of the mysterious woman gave her some doubts. If she needed a lawyer, things might be worse than she had thought. Her thoughts were interrupted as they entered a room. The room was dark and had a viewing window. The officer told Jenny and the woman to remain silent. Then, the light in the room beside them went on and they saw Malcolm being brought in. Seeing the man who hurt her made her uncomfortable, so Jenny turned her gaze to the woman beside her. To her surprise, she saw a smirk on the woman's face. Was that a good sign? Or why did she do that? Jenny shook her head and tried to focus on Malcolm's interrogation. This was important. The longer she watched, the more angry she became. Did he actually give her a stolen ring? Malcolm claimed he knew nothing about the ring being stolen and looked confused about the situation, but when the police asked him why he was nervous when Jenny didn't return the ring, he had an interesting answer. "I only wanted to give it back to the original owner," he said. Jenny was surprised by his reply. He got the ring from someone else. He managed to lose even more of her respect, but the police were very interested in his response and asked who the original owner of the ring was. Stephanie Gardner, Malcolm said, and the interrogation fell silent. The two officers inside the interrogation room looked at each other and stood up without saying anything. As they left the room, Jenny could hear the woman beside her let out a little sigh. Then she was startled by the door opening, and the two officers walked in. Care to explain, they asked. Jenny is confused about the whole situation and doesn't know what to say. She was about to explain her feelings to the officers when the woman beside her sighed deeply. I'm sorry, she started as she walked toward the officers. I can explain everything. Jenny didn't understand what was happening. The officers took the mysterious woman with them to the interrogation room, and Jenny was left alone in the viewing chamber. She stared at the scene before her in confusion. But Jenny couldn't believe what she heard when the officers started to interrogate the woman, and she began to explain everything. It turned out the woman wasn't a lawyer like Jenny had thought. No, she introduced herself as Stephanie Gardner, the ring's original owner. She had been the one who gave the ring to Malcolm, but what puzzled the police was that she was also the one who reported it stolen. And then Jenny's jaw dropped. Because when the police asked why she gave the ring away and then reported it stolen, the woman answered she wanted to frame Malcolm because she discovered he was cheating on her. Jenny was in disbelief as she realized what was going on. Malcolm had not only cheated on her, but also on this woman. Stephanie discovered he was not only cheating on her, but that he was actually going to be married to someone else. She couldn't believe someone would cheat, let alone on multiple people. So she planned her revenge. She gave Malcolm a ring and then reported it stolen, hoping Malcolm would be caught. I realized the plan wasn't put together that well, Stephanie confessed. Jenny stood silently in the observation room, trying to process this unexpected turn of events. Eventually, a smile appeared on her face. She understood the woman's feelings and applauded her creativity, but this wasn't the way to get revenge. Due to the woman's confession, the case was closed. Malcolm proved innocent and was released, while Stephanie got a massive fine for the framing job. Jenny could see Malcolm was miserable. He had lost both his relationships, and she could see it tormented him deeply, as he deserved. Then, an officer approached her. "You're free to go," he said, handing her the ring. She looked at him in confusion, and the man explained that it was officially her property as Stephanie had voluntarily given it to Malcolm, who gave it to her. Jenny couldn't help but smile. She knew exactly what to do with it. Jenny understood exactly how Stephanie had felt and didn't blame her. So she approached the woman and gave her back her ring, as it seemed the right thing to do. The two women then talked about their shared experience and helped each other with their struggles, becoming friends in the process.